So here's the differential back from the rebuild shop, and you can see it's got the new side yokes in it, and we just did everything: new bearings, seals, whatnot, obviously fluid, limited slip additives. So it's looking pretty good, ready to go back in. But I think I'm going to stop first and just put a fresh coat of just cast iron paint on it, just make it look fresh, and then we'll go ahead and put it in. So I got a coat of cast iron paint on it, just kind of evens everything up, and then I recreated the factory marking on it. That's what I've seen in magazines that was on from the factory, and you'll never see it once it's in the car, but what the heck, why not, right? So now I'm going to get this on the jack stand and start getting it positioned under the car. So we've got this ready to go. I've cleaned up the threads, chased the threads on the fasteners. So we're going to roll this bad boy underneath, get it lined up, and then we're going to start dropping the bolts through the frame rail and hopefully get a couple of those started. That's going to be a little challenge, but we've done it before. It just takes a little bit of patience. So let's go ahead and roll this thing under, get it into position. And I have taken some simple green and a couple rags. Look how dirty that water is. Cleaned up underneath here. Just get under here with the light. So now when we put it back up, all the cross members are nice and clean. All that nice raw fiberglass is nice and clean. So got all that tidied up. Might as well do it while we're here, right? Makes for a better looking job. And the exhaust pipes still need a little bit. The shocks I'm not going to clean. You can see I've got like some grease on those. These shocks are actually shot. This one on the driver's side is completely shot. Passenger side's not so bad, but I got two new ones coming in. That's what happens when you drive these things. So, and the gas tank, we tidied that up. Of course, that's in real nice shape. So here we go. We're going to roll the rear end, get it right in that position. As I raised the differential up, I remembered to put this front mounting bracket on. And that has to go on because of this bolt head we're looking at will interfere with the floor if we don't do it beforehand. So I have that on loose. The front end is still dropped down. You can see the mount right there. I've got to go ahead and hook up the drive shaft to it, but you got to have the back end in place before the diff goes up or the bolt won't go in. So right now I've got the differential up. Let me swing around. Up on the frame. I've got 4 bolts going, and I just got to finish tightening them. That's a little tricky getting those started, but once you get the first one in, the second one's easier and down the line. So everything's looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and get those tightened up, and then we can get rid of that jack. So we've got the differential up. We've got the 4 bolts mounted in and tightened. So I went ahead and I put the front mounting bracket on. And remember, we put this bolt in, this back long bolt through before we raised everything up. So this bracket was just hanging. So before we put that in, went ahead and got the drive shaft reattached, and then ran the front mount in. And of course, I don't know if I can get my camera up in here. Got the side bolts in. So that is all done. Front mount is done, so the diff is in. So now I think we're going to do a little more cleanup. And that's probably going to be the next step, then probably the leaf spring. So in the meantime, we're painting other parts. The bracket that goes in down here, I've got that repainted. The spring bracket that holds that in, I've repainted that. So I'll probably touch up the paint on the half shafts and the spring, and then we'll start hanging the spring. Well, I'm going to work on something a little different right now. The shocks, I put new shocks on this car when I restored it 30 years ago. And see if I can get this. They are, let's see. I can't do this one-handed. They're pretty well shot. So we're going to pull the rear shocks off. And I have purchased some new shocks, and boom. So we'll get the old ones off. We'll start putting these bad boys on. So here we are. We got the old shocks off, and see if I can show this. And then it doesn't come back up. So I pull it back apart. Yep, there it is. Extended. That's how dead it is. And of course, this bad boy, ain't no way I'm moving it. So let's go ahead and get that bolted in. So we got the new shocks in. It was just kind of nice to do that while we're in here. We got things cleaned up a little bit. You know, you always get a little bit of road dirt. Cleaned up the mufflers and just kind of wipe things down. They just get dirty when you drive them. But new shocks are in, so now we're going to move over to the leaf spring. And I just cleaned that up and put a fresh coat of paint on it just because, again, we got it out and did the mount. So we'll go ahead and get that up in position and get the bolts started for the mount. So we got the spring in. What I did was I hung the spring off these two pipes, and then I set the plate in. It's got a little alignment piece right there in the center, and there's a pin in the top that aligns into the diff. And I just raised it with a floor jack and just got it so that the alignment pin was up in the diff. And with that, I could run one bolt in, get a few threads, rock it the other way, get a few threads, get all 4 bolts in. Then I ran them snug, torqued them to 60 foot-pounds, and then came back and torqued them again up to 75. So it's in there nice and tight. That's the factory spec. So now I've got to get the ends attached. And I got to do that on both sides. And these mufflers, obviously I left those loose so I could get that spring in. I got to put those mounts back on. So we'll get going on that. Well, we got a little bit of project creep here. I was greasing up the bearings in the rear, and I felt just a little bit of play on that, and the outer bearing, I don't know, it just feels a little rough, and I got it this far apart, so I've decided to order up new bearings and races for the passenger side, and got tools and shims coming for knocking it apart and putting it back together again. So that's going to take a little extra time to do that, but this is the time to do it. And going through the U-joints, this half shaft, you can see I've taken some stuff apart here, and you can see that on this U-joint, see how nice and shiny those surfaces are? See if I can get that to focus better. Okay, 3 don't look too bad, but then we roll to this side. Yeah, that bad boy's gone. So we got another U-joint coming. The other ones feel really good. I got a feeling this one just wore out. And the cap on this, all the needle bearings were gone. It was cracked at the surface, and you can see right by my thumb, if I can get that to focus, there's a crack going about halfway down the cap. So yeah, another U-joint coming. So we'll get that tidied up. Everything else feels good, greased up. So with that, we're going to take this half shaft, which I have greased and checked out. Everything feels good. And we are going to take and pop that in right up in there. So that'll be our next step. I'm going to get that in. Now the locks for the bolts that go on this end are not in yet. So I'm going to start the bolts, get it in place, and then since there's 2 locks, I'm going to pull them off 2 at a time and replace them. But at least that'll get the half shaft in there. So this afternoon we're going to go ahead and get this bad boy at least in, and then we'll put the locks in once they come in. So we got the trailing arm in, and we got the shims in, and we put them back where they were last time we had alignment done, and the bolt is in. So that's looking good. So now we're going to hook up the brake line and start looking at getting the half shaft in. And then of course we got to get the leaf spring reattached. That's pretty doggone easy. So let's go after those couple things. All right, making progress. Everything's looking good there. We've got the everything torqued up. Now I've got the half shaft in loosely, so now we'll put the Fasteners in there, and we still got to attach the leaf spring, but making good progress. So we got the trailing arm in. Now we got the half shaft in. Get some light on that. Got her tightened up off the diff. Got new locks put in. Got the bolts tightened there, torqued and locked. So now we're going to put the strut rods in. We've got the strut rod bracket right here. So we're going to line those up and get those bolted up to the diff. And the last thing we're going to do is put the leaf spring back on this side. So we are really, really close. All right, we got the strut rods in and the strut rod bracket. A little challenging getting the eccentric bolt through on this side. It wants to hit this drop in the body. So what I had to do for these 4 mounting bolts up in here, doing this upside down, I had to put longer bolts in. Let me bring this bracket down. With that, I slid the strut rod in and ran the eccentric bolt through. Did that on both sides. Then I slowly put the shorter bolts in and ran the whole thing up. So that was kind of my trick there. And then I marked everything. These are eccentric, and it sets the alignment for the rear tires. And I'd marked that, so I rolled everything back till I hit my marks, tightened the nuts down, and that is looking good. So with that, I mean, we are really looking good back here. We got half shafts in, we got the new U-joint, we got the bearings in, so leaf springs in. So now I'm going to put the exhaust tips in, and I've got to put brakes on that side because I had that all apart, so we'll do that. Okay, we got the brakes back together, got the emergency brake hooked back up, and we've got the brakes bled. We got that done. So we get the brake drums on, and then it's time for the spare tire carrier. So we got the spare tire carrier in, got the tub and the lid, so everything down here is done. And of course, then we went ahead, put the brake drums on, and the tires. So she is now officially done. Just need to take her out, do a test drive, but for the most part, it's ready to go back on the road.